My MIL blew through her retirement savings and lied about it for years, making us believe they still had money. We found out when my FIL tried to sell his prize car to pay property taxes on their beach house. This has been boiling inside me for a while, and I need to get it all out. Fair warning, this is a long one. If you make it to the end, thanks for listening. This is one of those family situations where you just look around and wonder how things got so messed up. So here we go. My husband and I recently found out that my mother-in-law, MIL, has blown through all of her retirement savings. We weren't supposed to find out. In fact, if it hadn't been for my father-in-law, FIL, accidentally letting something slip, we'd still be in the dark. Here's how it all unraveled. A few weeks ago, we learned that my FIL was trying to sell one of his prized possessions, a classic, collectible sports car that he's had for decades. He's always been a car guy, and that car was his baby, something he always said he'd pass down to my husband. But now he's trying to offload it because they're in desperate need of cash to pay the property tax on their second home, a small beach house they rent out during the summer for a bit of extra income. This didn't sit right with us. Why was he selling the car just for taxes? And more importantly, why hadn't they saved up for this, knowing the bill was coming? We asked some questions, and that's when the full story started to come out. Apparently, the insurance money from a settlement for some property damage was supposed to cover the property taxes on the beach house. My MIL was told explicitly by my husband to put that money aside until it was needed for the repair. Guess what? She spent it, and then lied about it. When we confronted her, she insisted they had needed to use the insurance money for living expenses, but she wouldn't get specific. My husband was frustrated and tried to reason with her, explaining that selling the sports car wouldn't even get them the best price right now. He told her that selling a classic car during the fall in New England is practically a rookie mistake. Everyone knows that winter is around the corner and no one's looking to buy a convertible when it's about to snow. Then he asked the big question, what are you going to do when you have nothing left to sell? She tried to brush him off, but we kept pushing for answers, and finally, she admitted the truth. All the investments she had insisted for years she didn't want to touch because they were living off the interest? Gone. Every cent. All the money she received when she sold a building before the state could take it by eminent domain? Gone too. Same story with the proceeds from a property my FIL owned with his brother that they sold a few years back. All of it vanished, and we had no idea. She had been making us believe for years that they still had their savings. It turns out they were just playing pretend, like if they said the money was still there, then maybe it would be. I was furious. My husband was devastated. He's been trying to talk some sense into them for years, reminding them that they're retired now and can't be spending money frivolously. But clearly, none of those warnings sank in. Now, they're scrambling and talking about selling the beach house because they need the cash. Honestly, I think that's probably the only sensible thing left to do, but knowing them, they'd likely blow through that money, too, if they don't put it into something secure. Then, to make matters worse, my husband offered to lend them the money they needed to cover the tax bill, if they agreed to pay it back with interest. I know, that might sound harsh to some, but given their track record, he figured it was the only way to make sure they didn't just treat it like free money. And here's where I came in. I spoke up and said that we are in no position to lend anyone money right now, especially with my plans to retire early next year. I could see the look on my husband's face. He was torn between wanting to help his parents and knowing that I was right. We've worked so hard to save for our own future, and I wasn't about to let their poor planning jeopardize that. But I could also see the guilt eating at him. He's always been the responsible one in the family, the one who has to clean up everyone else's mess. And he's been feeling like he failed somehow, like he should have been able to prevent this, even though we both know that's not true. But then my MIL decided to pull out her trump card. She looked at my husband and with a completely straight face said, well, we wouldn't be in this mess if we hadn't paid for your college and law school. That's why we don't have money now. I saw my husband's face fall. I knew how much that hurt him. He never asked them to pay for his education. In fact, he didn't even know they were planning to cover the costs until it was already done. And because of that, he wasn't able to apply for financial aid. They paid for his schooling so he wouldn't have student loans, but now they're throwing it in his face like it was some huge sacrifice that ruined their lives. It's like she's saying all of this was his fault, like he somehow made them spend all that money. But they're the ones who chose to live beyond their means, taking fancy vacations, buying cars they didn't need, and doing all the other things they swore they could afford. And now, she wants to lay that guilt trip on him because he's successful and has a stable career. It's just not fair. I'm so angry for him. It's not his responsibility to fix the mess they created. And I just don't understand how anyone in this day and age can blow through so much money without a plan. They had decades to save and invest wisely, but now they're left with nothing, and they expect us to step in and save them. And honestly, I know my husband is still thinking about it. Even though I said we can't afford to help them out, I know he's considering ways to make it work. That's just the kind of person he is. He can't stand to see his parents struggle, even if they put themselves in this position. But I don't want to enable their bad choices, especially when it means putting our own future at risk. I don't know what's going to happen next, but I'm so tired of this cycle. I just wish they'd taken our advice before it got to this point. Maybe then, we wouldn't be having this conversation at all. If you made it this far, thanks for sticking with me. I really needed to get that off my chest. I know it's a lot, and honestly, I don't even know what to do with all these feelings right now. Just needed to vent somewhere without having to hear advice on what we should or shouldn't do. Sometimes you just need to scream into the void. Story 2. Emile demands to move in after our baby is born, but only if she gets the master bedroom. My husband and I are expecting our first child in a couple of months, and we're over the moon with excitement. We've been working hard to get everything ready, preparing the nursery, organizing the house, attending prenatal classes. You know, all the stuff new parents do when they're trying to feel somewhat prepared for a life-changing event. But one thing we didn't anticipate was the level of interference we'd get from my Emile. For context, my Emile has always been a bit intense. She's one of those moms who think they know best, regardless of whether you've asked for their input. So, we knew she'd have a lot to say about the baby and our plans, but we never thought she'd take things this far. It all started at a family dinner a few weeks ago. We were sitting around the table, chatting about how the pregnancy was going, and out of nowhere, my Emile drops a bombshell. With a big smile on her face, she says, "So, I've been telling my friends that I'll be moving in with you for a few months once the baby is born. They all think it's such a wonderful idea that I'm going to be there to help you both out." She said it so casually, like this was a totally normal thing that we had already discussed and agreed upon. But my husband and I just stared at her, completely blindsided. My husband finally managed to ask, "Mom, what are you talking about? We never talked about you moving in." Emile just waved her hand like we were being ridiculous. Well, of course we didn't talk about it, but it's the logical thing to do, isn't it? New parents never know what they're doing, and I'll be there to make sure everything is done right. You two will be so busy with the baby. You won't have time to take care of the house or cook, and you'll need someone experienced to make sure the baby's schedule is right. She said it with such a tone of finality, like she was already packing her bags. I tried to keep my cool and told her that while we appreciated her wanting to help, we felt like we needed some time to adjust to being parents on our own. We were looking forward to finding our own rhythm and bonding as a family. But Emile just shook her head and said, "You'll change your mind when you see how hard it is. I'll just come prepared." That should have been our first clue that she wasn't taking no for an answer. Fast forward a few days, and she calls my husband to iron out the details of her moving in. By this point, we had both agreed that we absolutely were not comfortable with her staying with us long term, but she had other plans. She started listing out things like what kinds of meals she'd cook while she was here and how she'd be on night duty so we could get some rest. My husband interrupted her and politely told her, "Mom, we love you, but we've decided we're not going to have anyone staying with us when the baby arrives. We want to handle this on our own." That's when things got interesting. She got quiet for a second, then said, "Well, I don't see why I shouldn't come if I'm going to be helping. It'll be better for all of us if I just move in, and I'm sure OP will appreciate not having to do everything herself. Besides, it's my grandchild too. I have every right to be there." My husband, bless his heart, remained calm and repeated that we had made up our minds and that this was what we wanted. He thought that was the end of it. But Emile wasn't done. She shifted gears and pulled out her biggest demand yet. She says, "Fine, if I do come to stay, then I want the master bedroom. It's just practical. I'll need my space to rest after helping out all day, and you two will be too busy with the baby to use it anyway. Plus, the guest room bed is too small for me. I need something comfortable." I could hear my husband's jaw drop over the phone. He put her on speaker so I could hear this lunacy for myself. I couldn't believe my ears. She wanted our bedroom in our home, while my husband and I would be expected to take shifts sleeping in the guest room and the nursery with our newborn. "Mom, that's not happening," my husband said firmly. "This is our home, and we're the ones bringing home a baby, not you. You can't just take over our space like that." Emile launched into a tirade about how we were being ungrateful and selfish for not letting her help. She insisted that we clearly didn't understand how difficult raising a newborn would be, and that we'd be begging for her help once we realized how much work it was. She even threw in a comment about how it was no wonder first-time parents are always overwhelmed when they refuse good advice. I finally lost my patience and told her, it's not about being overwhelmed or not appreciating your help. It's about setting boundaries and respecting our wishes as new parents. You don't get to decide where you'll stay or take over our bedroom. That set her off. She started crying and accusing us of trying to keep her away from her grandchild, saying that we were being unreasonable and that all she wanted to do was be close to the baby. I swear, she even tried to pull out the whole, after everything I've done for you, guilt trip. It was a total meltdown, and my husband eventually hung up, telling her we'd talk later when she calmed down. But it didn't end there. Oh no. Emile has now started a full-blown smear campaign against us. She's been telling everyone, her friends, our extended family, the mailman, anyone who will listen, that we've banned her from seeing her grandchild and that we're being cruel by refusing her help. My husband has tried explaining to a few relatives what actually happened, but it's like she's gotten to everyone first with her version of events. Suddenly, we're getting calls from family members who think we're being harsh and telling us how lucky we are that she's willing to help out. It's so frustrating. We never said she couldn't see the baby. We just didn't want her living with us, and certainly not taking over our bedroom. And now, instead of focusing on the last weeks of my pregnancy, I'm stuck dealing with this drama. My husband is doing his best to manage it, but I can see how stressed he is. It's like we can't catch a break. The worst part is that Emile's attitude hasn't changed. She's still acting like it's just a matter of time before we come crawling back to her, begging her to move in. She even had the nerve to text my husband last night saying, "You'll see how hard it is soon enough. I'll keep my bags packed." Yeah, good luck with that, Emile. We've made it clear that our home is ours, and we're going to figure this out as a family, just the three of us. But I have a sinking feeling this drama is far from over. TLDR, Emile announced she was moving in with us after our baby is born without asking, then demanded the master bedroom for herself so she could rest after helping with the baby. We said no, and now she's telling everyone we've banned her from seeing her grandchild and playing the victim, making our lives miserable right before the baby arrives.